Are you a young man living in the UK feeling directionless and lost? You're not alone. So many other young men living in the UK are considering whether to leave or stay in the UK. In this video, I'm going to break down the pros and cons of leaving the UK so that you can find direction in your life and know whether you want to stay. So we're going to start off with the pros, and I think it's just important to be aware that not everybody's situation is the same, and we're going to be talking about, for example, from my experience, your experience might be different. And yeah, I think it's also important to remember that it depends on where you're moving. If you're moving from England to America, it's going to be a vastly different situation compared to if you're moving from England to Bali or Guatemala or something like that. So we're going to start off with the pros of leaving the UK, and just to begin with, we're going to be talking about the cost of living. So if you've lived in the UK recently, we all know the cost of living in the UK since COVID has just skyrocketed. It's harder for people to live. The cost of living has increased. The standard of living has decreased. So in theory, the biggest pro of leaving the UK, or one of the biggest pros, would be the fact that you're getting away from that huge cost of living. The UK is the 12th most expensive country in the world, which, you know, it's up there, which makes it harder for young people, especially if you're starting an online business. You see these people who are going overseas and immigrating essentially from the UK. They're starting online businesses, all of them. And when you start an online business, you're starting off small, aren't you? You might only have £1,000. You might only make £1,000 worth of revenue each month to begin with. And what can you live off for £1,000 a month in the UK? You might barely be able to get rent, you know, near London. I'm not sure about outside of London. I know it's cheaper, but you're not going to be having a good quality of life. And I'll be surprised if you can even live without living with your parents or something like that. So by starting your own online business and then moving to outside of the UK to a low cost of living area, again, that's going to be cheaper. You can move out, you can live on £1,000 in Guatemala, you can live on £1,000 in Bali and have a great quality of life. And I think the sad thing about this is the only reason why you can have a great quality of life because of the cost of living is reduced is because the people there are so poor. But that's just the fact of life. So as long as you can go over there with Western income, with your online business, even if you're making £1,000 a month, you're gonna be absolutely fine. I think a huge pro is just being able to move on with your life, if that makes sense, to be able to find direction in your life. I think as a young man living in, you know, in your 20s, I think it's important to go travel, experience things and find out what you love, who you are and what you want to do for the rest of your life. And it's so key that you do this in your 20s and that you don't put it off, because if you put it off, you're going to be one of those guys who hits 30, you've got a wife, family, mortgage, and you can't travel because you've got these responsibilities. Or you can travel, but you can't travel to the same extent or have the same flexibility and freedom as you might have when you're 20 years old. So I think that's another huge reason why you should leave the UK and go travel, is because you can, and you want to find direction. If you go travel and you think, oh, actually I don't like this, great, now you know you want to stay in the UK, you can settle down, you know what you're doing. Whereas if there's always this thought in the back of your mind, oh, should I go travel, you're not going to be having a great time. So another pro to leaving the UK is politics. You're getting away from all the crappy politics in the UK, and I think we all know what we're talking about, to be honest. The cost of living, immigration, mass immigration, getting away from wage stagnation, essentially just years and years of stagnation across the country. And I think a lot of people like to complain, but they don't like to take action. If you're moving country, at least you're taking action and making a change for yourself so that you can be happier. So I think that's another huge pro. I think another huge pro of leaving the UK is just being able to see new cultures and gain new experiences. So I'm going to give you a personal example. Recently I went to Guatemala, which is in Central America. And I went for 2 weeks with the idea of seeing whether I want to move there forever eventually. And when I went there, I couldn't believe the culture, and completely different to England's culture. And I think it was very eye-opening for me in seeing how things can be done in different ways, and how, for me at least, the rule making that we have in England, you'll know if you live in England, oh, you can't do that because that's against the law, or you can't do that because so-and-so said. Whereas in Guatemala, it's much more free. And I think the same goes for all Southeast Asia. Although I might be wrong, please correct me. So I think that's a huge benefit to traveling, is that you get to see these different cultures. Whereas in England is such a multicultural society that everything has all the cultures have influenced each other. So you're getting a mishmash of cultures when you're in England. Whereas when you go to another country like Guatemala or Bali or India, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, you're seeing the culture untouched as it was hundreds of years ago, essentially. Obviously, bar a few obvious exceptions. So my last pro that I've thought of moving out of the UK and leaving the UK is simply networking. When I went to Guatemala, again from my personal experience, we went to Antigua, which is a Spanish colonial city in Guatemala, and we went to a cafe, and this was an expat cafe or digital nomad cafe, and it was amazing to see everybody from different cultures working together, working on their online business. And you could talk to them and see what they were working on, and I can just imagine you'd be able to make a lot of friends through that avenue. So I think networking, and they're working on the same things that you're working on, so you can share ideas. So I think networking in terms of online businesses is great in these expat countries. Obviously London is great for business networking though, for normal career orientated people. I just want to say, if you're a young man living in the UK and you're just looking for direction in life, you're looking for guidance on finance, and you're looking for personal development, please remember to subscribe. I'm trying to help as much people as possible, as many people as possible, and if you want to join my journey, please feel free to subscribe. So now moving on to the negatives of moving out of the UK, and I think the biggest negative that I've noticed is family. If you leave the UK, essentially, bar a few very specified circumstances, you are leaving your family behind. If you're born in the UK, your family's in the UK. And that can be tough, because when I went to Guatemala, my family member has actually moved to Guatemala and is living in Guatemala now, which is crazy. And he's doing an SMMA business, and it's going great. And I was thinking about me in his scenario, and I realized that actually I would be so lonely, because to me family is very important. So you have to go out there and create your own family, which can be really hard. You need to create your own social life again, which I can imagine will be very hard. And I think this is a bigger issue with digital nomad rather than just immigrating to another country, because as a digital nomad you're moving around constantly, you're exploring different countries, and whilst that's great, I don't think it's long term. For me at least, I don't think it has longevity, because you're constantly meeting new people, or maybe not meeting new people, but let's say you're making new friends and then you're gone and you're never coming back, and because you can only pick one place to live for forever. And even if you do decide to come back and just travel, they're not true friends, they're not real friends, because you're barely seeing them. And to me, I don't see that as a real friend. It's not a deep connection there. I think another pro to staying in the UK is just maintaining the status quo. If you have a good life in England and you're somewhat disappointed with how things are going, it might be better for you to stay in the UK and just make things better here, to be honest. Because really the opportunity cost of moving out of the UK, what it really means is that you're throwing away all your progress in the UK and you're moving somewhere else. Not all of your progress, but you know what I'm trying to say. And so if you have a decent life in the UK, it might be better just to stay, really. You've got a safety net in the UK. The benefit system in the UK is the best benefit system, or one of the best benefit system. If you're poor and you've moved to another country, well, you're pretty much screwed and you have to move back. Whereas if you're poor in the UK, it's probably a very good country to be poor in, because of the benefits and how much support you receive from the government. I think another pro to staying in the UK are the job opportunities, because if, let's say, you go to Bali, you go to Guatemala, go to Southeast Asia, and you do your online business and you start making a grand, so you move out there and then things flop, well, you're screwed. You're not going to be making you're not going to be working a local job, because you're going to be earning so little. Some of them earn $300 a month. It's just such a small amount, and that's not why you've moved out there. Whereas if things go bad with your online business and you're living in the UK with your parents, you can go and get a simple job. You can go work at Sainsbury's, you can go work wherever, and it's going to be hard, but you're going to be earning a lot more than if you were working in Bali, Southeast Asia, Guatemala, Central America, South America. So that's one important thing to consider. The job opportunities in the UK are much better, and as much as people like to complain, I will admit they're much better than in those countries. Right, so those were all the factors that came to my mind, really. At the end of the day, you need to make a decision based upon your circumstances, how you feel, and you need to make a decision based on that. Do whatever's going to make you happy, because other people aren't going to make you happy. People want what they want from you. They don't want to make you happy.